Mhm. Thank you, Mariia, for joining our Trust Talks. I hope you will share with us your insights about the situation of trust in Ukraine. Do you witness any changes in trust, public trust towards the government, or you would say that it is the same? And what is the manifestation, and if you can touch upon the reasons or also elaborate on whether it is more public attitude or it is also a matter of institutions, how they work, communication, transparency, accountability. So is it about trust as an attitude, or it's about trustworthiness?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Alina, for having me, and thank you for the invitation. I will gladly share my personal insights. Well, as a communications professional, I read a lot about the matter of trust and reputation of different types of institutions in Ukraine. And what I see is the quite alarming tendency. First of all, if we look at the Edelman Trust Barometer survey, which was released in 2020, it is said that there is basically no trust in institutions as such. So the main actors of trust are the fellows, the local communities, the scientists, so basically people. And I think it's the key when we compare the paradigm of whether it's the governmental institutions and whether it's the general public. And speaking about that, I would say that in Ukraine, there was a kind of peculiar shift after 2014, after the Revolution of Dignity and the temporary occupation of Crimea. Before that, trust, the highest level of trust was possessed by such a social institution as a church. It still keeps the same tendency that in Ukraine, the highest level of trust is in the army, in the state bodyguard service, in the security service. So basically, in institutions that are accountable for our security and defense. Then it's church, and then it's volunteers. So again, people. So what I see here is that this shift actually shows us that there is a huge capacity for building trust for different types of institutions in Ukraine. What's also interesting, and what I personally believe, that with after 2014, there was created a new generation of cultural institutions in Ukraine. For example, Ukrainian Cultural Fund, Dovzhenko Center, which was renovated with a new leadership. There was Ukrainian Institute, which I'm a part of. So different part of institutions that brought the new way of doing business and a new way of leadership. And that, of course, affected a lot the general communication in society, and we brought more cultural projects. We brought more culture as such in let's say social discourse. That being said, I would say that culture, and I'm a strong believer that culture is one of the key factors that can increase and enhance the level of trust in between people, between civil society organizations and public institutions. So it goes both ways, actually. So the effective communication from government institutions, from public institutions, but also the ready to be open and ready for dialogue from civil society activists is necessary. And I think culture and cultural institutions were the moving force in this process, because the culture is actually something that helps you to see otherness in people, to build dialogue, to understand what do you mean, why different art mediums like performing arts, or let's say films, or literature, that when after movie or after the exhibition you can actually discuss with people what it's about, how do you see that. So I think it's a great space for dialogue, and that's why I think culture is key for building trust between institutions.
Well, I find it very interesting. It is also, you're kind of touching the one of the factors of building trust or strengthening trust, and through cultural talks, let's say, because what you described is culture. It gives more space for communication about this elaboration and communication about your identity, yourself, and it opened up like or enhanced the public trust within CSOs or general public people. But on the other hand, for some reason, as you said, the research of 2020 showed that the trust towards the government shrank. Am I right? So can I think that the communication between governmental bodies and the general public was missing something? And what was that?
I think that communication is the part of the whole process, because communications it's just something that goes after the actions. I mean, it goes with in parallel with the actions, but the actions per se must be or should be or have to be about good governance, about good leadership, about good thinking about people. That's when I'm speaking, for example, about public institutions. Even if the communication is effective and transparency goes without saying, and people are communicating like what they're doing, where do they spend taxpayers' money, and when they're doing all of that, but it's not something that in demand of general public, let's say, that's something that goes in conflict. That's where the trust actually collapses. And that's where I see that communication is vital, of course. It should be present, but it's also the part where the leadership should be in place. That's what I believe.
So can I assume that if we talk about the situation, like there is always what is said and what is done. When I say what is said, I mean the public discourse, and what is done is the policies, let's say, in general. Am I right that you are talking about the governmental side having more difficulty with the action, with the policy, while in the public side, it's kind of, especially in the field of culture, maybe I don't want to be critical, but I want to be skeptical. Maybe there is more field for sharing discourses, talking, but less for the action. And that is why this connection of action and discourse doesn't appear. It's just the thoughts maybe a bit skeptical, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm speaking about. I think that that's actually quite correct in some sense. Lately, there is still. I mean, it's ongoing. The crisis in Ukraine with cultural institutions. After COVID-19 pandemic, there is a situation that the culture is hugely underfinanced in Ukraine, because there are different priorities in the government. But unfortunately, there is lack of understanding that culture is about long-term results, and it's about long-term strategy, and people sometimes want this decorative, flashy decisions. And that's where we face this cultural crisis, and those new institutions that I've just mentioned before, they imply not so, let's say, good governance policies. And that's where I find it's quite a bright example of how Ukrainian activists reacted. So in cultural community, as a response towards this not well thought policy, there was created a manifest of culture for changes, manifest, and they created the activists united and created the new initiative. That's where I see that people should talk to each other, they should more listen to each other, then it has its results. So that it's not like, people just, governmental institutions just rolling out new policies and people disagree with them and they just keep quiet. No, it's not. And people unite and they try to show up, to stand up for their values. And it's also a question of values, and whether they are shared by the government or they are not.
Yeah, thank you very much. You are giving us different angles than we talked within our previous trust talks, and it really gives much food for thought, because it's not just about policies. You can decide what you want to do, but you also need to know where you want to get in terms of the identity and like shared self, if we can say that about the society. I have, I guess, the last question. So what do you think should be changed and improved in Ukraine? What do we as a public need to learn? And what the institutions should change, how they should be changed to have better trust, and how do public or CSOs need to talk to the government, like how to communicate with each other to have better trust?
Yeah, okay, sure. I would say that first of all, it's active engagement and participation. So from both sides, the institutions should be more open and communicate their decisions, speak about their inner life, let's say, what are they doing daily, because some activists do not have no idea what people in let's say offices, white collars, what are they doing there. And I think it's important to keep this, humane face of institutions that will increase trust and that will increase the understanding of what are these people doing and why are they doing that. That's actually the most important question. And from the side of activists, active participation is also important, because if there is no reaction on even Facebook posts or some actions, if people are just ignorant of what other institutions are doing, then how can you demand anything if you're stay so phlegmatic? That's not that's just not fair to my mind. Second point I would say is the readiness for short-term partnership. In Ukraine, it's quite a peculiar thing that we believe that if we have a partnership that's once and for all, that should last forever, it's a huge thing that should be strategic. But for short-term problem, for short problems, for let's say instant issues, sometimes short-term partnerships are crucial. That's why I believe that we should learn from both sides, from public institutions and CSOs, we should try to we should learn how to sustain these short-term partnerships. And the third point I would say is the skill of listening and a skill of critical dialogue and critical and a skill of communication, of course. If you listen carefully to people, it's 50% of success, because sometimes there's so much of information in media, in our social networks, that we do not pay enough attention, and that's what we should probably do. And what my pain is, that what I would like to share is sometimes activists are too critical of what people in public institutions are doing. They are going, let's say, to the our European partners and say then, look, there is lack of change, there is lack of decision making, but some things are in crucial need of time. That's where there should be this, dialogue and understanding that we're doing something, but some things just need more time. So that would be my top 3 points of what should be done from both sides, actually.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sure that those steps are important not only for Ukraine, but you are raising issues that are common for others, especially post-Soviet countries. And yeah, in our countries with the activism that has a new phase, let's say, from in recent decades. Yeah, it's very interesting thing, development that has its pros and cons, and the activism still, like, let's say it's the beginning of the
Yes.
thing that wasn't there, and it will change much. Yeah, and thank you very much also for your second step, that is, I read as a mobilization skill about a short partnership. Yeah, I guess we need to learn to mobilize fast for for solving an issue, and then when the issue is solved, we can go and do the rest of our job separately. I think it's great comment. Thank you very much, Mariia.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you for having me.